action. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Moments That Define Us. I'm your host, Iryna Barnett. Why do I sound like I'm about to report to you some breaking news? I'm excited because this is my solo episode and I haven't done one of those in a while. And the topic of today's discussion is motherhood. Kind of all stages of motherhood. What does it mean to be a mother? What does it mean to be a working mother? What, pregnancy, do's and don'ts during pregnancy for people who are not pregnant. And the reason that I wanted to talk about this, like a few things recently happened that I was like, I want to record something on motherhood. So I think you can see the balloons on the background. So for the past 2 weeks, I have been celebrating my kids' birthday. So my kids are 2 years and a week apart. And so this year I took them out of school a little bit earlier and we did great things and just the two of us, with each of them. And so I was just kind of reflecting on the time back to when I was pregnant. My daughter is 8 and my son, so she just turned 8, my son just turned 6. And I think that, when I'm sure all the women know, like when you're in the trenches of motherhood, time kind of goes fast. And with all the activities, with everything, we kind of forget to stop and appreciate all this moments with the kids, right? Because it's true what they say, they grow up so fast and before you know it they are, they need you less and less, which is not a bad thing. And they wanted to hang out with their friends, they're more independent, and then they go to college and all of that. So I just been thinking, fall is the whole season of birthdays in our family. My husband starts, then two of my kids in October, then I'm in November, and we have some other family members. So it just made me think a lot about that. But another thing that also sparked this interest to do this conversation is I recently listened to the very popular podcast called Call Her Daddy, and she had the host, Alex Cooper, had famous Shonda Rhimes, that created Grey's Anatomy and Bridgerton and How to Get Away with Murder. And so she was talking about her journey, how she always knew she wanted to be a mother, how she did, you know, motherhood a little bit differently, and also being a working mom. And I was like, each and every one of us have amazing story, right, of motherhood, of being pregnant, breastfeeding, all of that stuff. So I thought I'll dive deep into this today. Anyway, I have my notes. Let's dive in. So motherhood. And as I was preparing, I thought in my, early 20s, I used to be a nanny for the longest time for different age kids. And I always knew, hold on this, I always knew I wanted to be a mom. I always knew that. And I remember even being a nanny and parents would ask me like, oh, you work with kids so much. Do you still want your own kids? And I was like, yes. Even working with small kids just gave me more desire to wanting to have my own kids, because I got very lucky that I took care of some amazing kids that are grown-ups now. And so I always knew I wanted to be a mom. And the reason I say this, because some women say, there was a time I didn't want it to be a mom, and then I changed my mind, which is fine because we're allowed to change our mind. Some women say, I don't ever want to have kids, which is fine too. And I feel like a lot of the times society judges women, like the worst of a woman is her ability to reproduce and create, right? But if some women just don't want to have kids, and that's fine, and I have total respect for women that know exactly what they want but also what they don't want. For me, I knew I always wanted to be a mom. And I also always knew that I knew I wanted to have two kids. There was a period in my life where I wanted to have 3 kids. And one summer in Tulsa, Oklahoma, I know what you're thinking, Tulsa, Oklahoma. My husband is from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and we go there often because his family lives there. And I remember my son was still, how old was he? He must have been a little bit after 1. And that period where he just started walking. And so it was just, you had to keep an eye on him all the time. And I was just exhausted. And it's just, I don't know, I just knew that I don't have enough in me for a third kid. Like I remember that summer in Oklahoma. We didn't spend the whole summer there, but it just sounds so poetic. That summer in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Just something clicked in me. I love my baby so much. I don't think I have enough in me for a third one. And so I made a decision. My husband, on the other hand, I think he could have 10 kids if I wanted to. Which is funny because a lot of the times you hear a couple where a woman is the one that's saying, "Oh, I want more kids," and husband's like, "No, I don't want more kids." So anyway, in my situation was different. So now I look back, I'm like 6 and 8, and like during their birthdays, I was just, I don't know, I was reflecting a lot on the past 8 years of being a mom. Um, Different things that happen, so much of becoming a mother, especially in this country, when you decide to be a mother, everybody obviously has different situation, but daycare, right? It's extremely expensive. I mean, extremely expensive. Where we live in a neighborhood, there's a daycare walking distance. It just got built not too long ago. But I remember seeing something on social media where people were talking, how much is that? And it was like, I don't know, close to $2,000 a month, which is more than my mortgage. And so you think about how, there's all these people in this country who are like, pro-life, life starts at birth, but I don't know if they realize that life continues after the child is born, right? And family needs support with great maternity leave, with great child care, with great support that unfortunately here is non-existent. So at the time when I was pregnant with both of my kids, I worked for a big bank, and I had 16 weeks of maternity leave, full pay, which I know to all my European listeners is like 16 weeks, like what the heck? But in US, funny enough, it's a lot. It's a lot of 16 weeks full pay. And obviously you have your job, right? But I remember when I got pregnant with my daughter, I was telling my sister, "Oh my gosh, I am so lucky because I'm going to have 16 weeks of maternity leave." She goes, "Oh my gosh, 16 weeks? What are you going to do after?" I was like, "Daycare?" So to me, because I was so like, I haven't lived in Ukraine in so long, so I just forgot how in any other countries, how maternity leave you have at least 6 months or a year, So I got lucky in a sense living here that I got my maternity leave with my daughter and my son, 16 weeks, which was great. I with my daughter I had vaginal births, and with my son I had a scheduled C-section. I was thinking about my pregnancy, right? And even like having another kid or not having another kid. I know a lot of women have difficult pregnancy. So that is one of the reasons that maybe some women don't want to have another child because of that difficult pregnancy. I got very lucky because I loved being pregnant. Like I loved being pregnant so much. I loved maternity clothes. I love everything about it. I didn't have any complication, thank God. Didn't have any complications. Everything was good. And obviously, just towards the end of the pregnancy, you become so big and heavy, you are not sleeping, you can barely walk, you're just like a big balloon. So you just wanted the baby to be out, and you just want to meet the baby, right? Because you start feeling like all the kicks and everything, and so you're just ready to meet the baby. So, but every woman feels that, right? But as far as like being pregnant, I loved it. With my son, I had a scheduled C-section. I know for there are women that have to have a what do you call it, emergency C-section, right, where you go in not knowing that you're going to have that. I went in knowing. I decided to have a C-section because we went to the doctor and they told us, that a son is a little bit, he's going to be a little bit of a bigger baby. And the doctor was great because he said, I'm going to tell you everything that could go wrong, and you can decide now versus being on a table, in the operating room, and decide, do I want to, do I not? And at some point we would have to say, yes, you have to do it. So I wasn't pressured to do it, because I also know there are stories about that women being pressured doing different things that they maybe don't want to do. I remember, when the doctor told us what could go wrong, and then he said, and nothing could go wrong. We just don't know, but we have to tell you all these different risks that might happen with bigger baby. And I remember driving home, and me and my husband came home and started talking, and I said, I already like overthink so many things, and I have anxiety. And I said, I I want to go in with like clear mind. If nothing happened before the scheduled C-section, everything, I just want to go with clear mind, knowing, okay, this is going to happen, right? So I went with that, and I have to tell you, the when I didn't have any contraction, anything. So my scheduled C-section was on the day that it was scheduled. We went to the hospital, and when I was pregnant with my son, I got into Stevie Wonder, and I was listening to Stevie Wonder all the time. I was dancing, so naturally now my son loves Stevie Wonder, which makes me so happy. But I told my husband, like, to create a little playlist, for when we go into the hospital and whatever. And so he, like, when we are in the hospital, he said, I'm going to ask the doctor and the nurses if it's okay if I bring, what do you call it, like a little speaker, right, into the operating room. So it was not just Stevie Wonder, it was bunch of different songs that we both like. And so I remember that time in the operating room during my C-section was such joy for all the doctors and nurses, because as they were operating me, they were also enjoying the music. I mean, also, not don't think that it was like, disco ball, and the doctors were dancing, and none of that. They were just so happy with having good music. Again, I got lucky, and I have to count my blessings when it comes to my pregnancy, because I got very lucky that I didn't experience any complications. And even after my C-section, the recovery, when well, for the most part, now, I mean, it's been what now, 6 years, right? Because my son was born with my second child, my son was born through the C-section. I would get like weird pains where my scar is, but they are very, very rare, So I am extremely grateful to have had a great pregnancy and a great recovery. Of course, I have the scar that always going to be there, but it's part of me, and it's always going to be there, right? But so these parts were great. Then breastfeeding, breastfeeding is another big topic. That's where I did not get lucky at all. Breastfeeding was the hardest thing for me. With my daughter, maybe I breastfed like 2.5 months. I had the most excruciating pain ever. And I could not produce milk. I was in pain. And, you know, I remember when I became pregnant, I did not have this, plan like, oh, I'm going to do birth without epidural. I had epidural with C-section. Obviously, um, they give you drugs to do the operation. But even with my daughter, with the natural birth, I was in so much pain. I was like, somebody created epidural, so I'm gonna take it. So I was like, how I'm gonna see how it goes. If I can do without it, I will. If not, not a big deal, right? So, but one thing I didn't even think that I couldn't do was breastfeeding. Like with that, I was like, that's gonna happen for me. And I don't know where I got this. Actually, I do, because my mom. So there's me and my brother, right? And my mom, she always tell me this stories how she had so much milk. Like she breastfed us, I believe, for the first maybe year or 8 months. I mean, she breastfed and she had enough milk, and she was even, I remember telling me, either with me or my brother, that she had so much that women that were in the hospital with her, that she was providing milk for other women because she had so much. And I was like, well, my mom did so great, so it's going to happen the same for me. And when it didn't happen, it hit me really, really hard, because it's with my first child. There's also a story with my second one that I will get into it. But it hit me so hard because I felt like I couldn't provide for my baby as a mother. There is this natural thing that I have, or I'm supposed to produce in my body. And I can't. I am in so much pain that I, I couldn't breastfeed my baby. And I remember at the beginning, because with your first child, you're learning a lot of different things, how to do, what not to do. But I remember we even went to like this milk bank, something where breast milk was like fucking gold. Okay, it was so expensive. And me and my husband look at each other like, we can't afford this. So the crazy thing happened where, but I was still determined, I am gonna breastfeed. I am gonna breastfeed. And I tried different things, didn't work. And my husband was like, let's try formula. And I was like, no freaking way. Like, because to me, and that's not what he was doing, but to me, it was like, you telling me you're gonna give my baby formula. You telling me I'm not a good mother, cannot produce, all these stories, because we are hormonal. We are post birth, a body change because we just grew human in a body. We are all hormonal, right? And again, there is this thing that you're supposed to have produced in your body for your child, and I couldn't. And any mention of formula would drive me crazy. And but then he said, well, we have to do this. Like, we can't starve her or give her, like, whatever the little tiny bit I had. And so that was really, really hard for me, because I felt like I wasn't enough as a mother during those early stages. And the same thing happened with my son. Kind of like when I was pregnant with my son, I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to breastfeed, if not. And then he was born. It's like a natural thing that you right away, at the hospital, they try, let's see if they latch, this, that, and the other. And so I tried it. And again, I was in like, it was excruciating pain in my breasts and in my soul. But luckily with my son, I breast him even less than that. My daughter, I think, was maybe 2.5 months, maybe 3. And again, that was mixed with formula, and I was pumping whatever little tiny bits I had just to, get all of that out. And with my son, it was even less, maybe it was a month. But I was like, why am I doing this to myself again? Like, my my daughter took formula and she's fine, she's healthy. So why am I doing this to myself again? We are so often as women so hard on ourselves because it's the pressure that the society puts on us, what kind of woman, what kind of mother, what kind of wife you have to be. And we take that and we judge us as well, of how we should be. And so I was definitely doing that to myself. I was definitely thinking that I wasn't enough, that I wasn't doing enough as a mother, that I couldn't produce, that I couldn't feed my baby. All of those stories were happening in my head. Um, so yeah, that was happening to me. But then, now my babies are 6 and 8, and they're fine, and they're healthy, and they're active. So the reason I'm telling you this story is because for anybody who is going through this right now, who is pregnant, who is, just at the beginning, if it's not happening for you, it is okay. It is more than okay. You do what works for you and for your baby. Because guess what? You also have to take care of yourself. And we often forget that when we are, oh my gosh, I feel like it's the whole life we just kind of put ourselves on the back burner until probably kids go to college. But at the beginning stages, we think like, I'm a new mom, there's this new human that I need to take care, and we do need to take care of, but we need to be good. We need to be good so we can be good for our kids and our family. Because if we are not good, that they are not good because they feel that. So if that's not happening for you, like, formula is okay too. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching Moments That Define Us podcast on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe so you know when the next episode is coming up. But not only subscribe, share with other people so we can build community around this podcast, so we can share more stories, more defining moments. Because as I always said, sharing a story has the power to heal. So subscribe and share, and let's build community. Thank you. I have a funny story about like breastfeeding and when people ask you. Also, like, I don't know who thinks that that's a good idea to like ask women, oh, are you breastfeeding? How's breastfeeding going? It's one thing if it's like your friend group, if it's your family, you sharing your experiences and stuff. But if it's some random, it doesn't matter, man or women, like, why do you need to know? Am I breastfeeding or not? So the story happened to me. I can't remember if I was pregnant, if that was with my daughter or my son. But anyway, had a hard time breastfeeding both of the kids. And I remember I used to go to this deli, um, and there was the woman who was working at the deli who would cut my oven roasted turkey or whatever I was getting, Swiss cheese, whatever I was getting at the deli, right? She saw me coming there pregnant, and just how you would normally just talk, hi, how are you? How's pregnancy going? How you feeling? All of that, right? Which is great, which is fine. And then, obviously when I gave birth, I didn't, go anywhere for a few weeks, and then okay, I need to get out of the house. So I went to the deli. She was like, oh my gosh, how are you? How is the baby? This, that, and the other. And she was like she asked me, are you breastfeeding? So imagine this. I'm in a deli, right? So there is a barrier where all of your meats and cheeses and everything sits. And so she's behind that. And so there's people behind me waiting for their deli meat. And she's like, how is breastfeeding going? And I was like, can I have a pound of oven roasted turkey? And she was like, so how's breastfeeding going? And I'm like, oh, it's okay. I decided not to breastfeed. Oh my gosh, why? One caveat to the story, she's Eastern European. So we talking with this specific woman, she's where she was from. I don't know if Russia or one of Eastern European, but anyway, we talk in Russian, which sometimes I feel like people from Eastern Europe have no like no boundaries what to ask and who to ask and even why. So anyway, so she's like talking in Russian to me, how is breastfeeding? I'm like, I decide, why would you know how good it is for the baby? I'm like, yeah, it's not working for me. You should try harder. And I'm standing there thinking, what in the actual fuck is happening right now? Like, why is she screaming and like people, looking at me? Now everybody is involved in the, my breastfeeding, my breasts, my everything. And I'm like, can I please have my fucking turkey and get the fuck out of this conversation? It was just like, to me, I felt very uncomfortable. Um, and like when somebody tells you it, like you can tell when somebody like wants this conversation to stop. So stop. Don't ask. Don't ask unless somebody tell you, unless it's your friend, and come to it gently, because again, it's the topic. Like I said, for me it was like, I am going to breastfeed. It's gonna happen for me. It was like a one thing I was sure of, and it didn't happen, and it was really really hard for me. So anyway, I had to then explain in the middle of a Russian deli why I was not breastfeeding. So that was great moment for me, and all the people that were involved in that. Don't do that to just random women that you don't know, that you really don't have relationship with. That's not okay. You know what else is not okay? Touching pregnant women's belly. Who made the executive decision that that was okay? Whoever made the decision, can you please get an executive order to get rid of it? Because that's also not okay. I have another story. So when I was working at the bank, I was working at the branch, right? So I remember I was like standing in the middle of a branch, and it was a branch that we would have a lot of people come in that we knew, right? Because they would come in on a daily and maybe weekly, monthly basis, that the faces. And so I remember I'm standing there greeting people, kind of asking what they need so I can direct them to the right people. And this woman comes to me and touches my, like, wants to touch my belly, and I turn away, and she looked at me like, oh. And I was like, no. So then she goes to a teller to do whatever teller transaction, and proceeds to tell that teller how rude it was of me to not let her touch my belly. I mean, again, what the fuck? Being pregnant doesn't mean that you can touch me and my belly. Like, what the heck? Like, to me, it's so crazy that people would just do that. I get it. It's exciting. There is a human, but before you do, ask. And if it's somebody that you don't know or don't have relationship with, don't touch a pregnant woman's belly. That's not okay. So no touching women's belly, and not asking if you're breastfeeding. And if somebody's not breastfeeding, oh my gosh, why? Breast is best. Well, sometimes it's not. Anyway, next thing that we all deal with is daycare, and having that village, as everybody say, it takes a village to raise a child. Some of us have the village, some of us don't, right? Like I mentioned, daycare here is extremely expensive. So some women and sometimes men choose, okay, only one of us will work, because why do I need to go and work and spend every single money and half of your money to put the baby in a daycare, right? If it doesn't make sense to go, then. But again, also everything is so expensive that unless one of the spouses in the family have a really good job, then you have to. So 16 weeks maternity leave, yay for me, that was great. And then we started touring daycares, and yeah, they were expensive back then, they're expensive now. So we already established that, right? But I don't necessarily want to talk about like how expensive daycare is, but like that village, the village that Everybody talks about it, and not every one of us can have that. We got lucky because my mom was able to get a tourist visa and come stay with us, help us with both of our kids, actually. But also, we did find a daycare, which was incredible. It was an in home daycare. It was three sister, older women that created this daycare, that they just have all kinds of different kids and babies there. And it was more like a grandmother's house. And I'm so grateful for this three amazing women, Miss Loretta, Miss Rita, and Miss Leola, that they were part of my village when my kids were little, because my daughter found one of her best friends in that daycare. They would always do my baby's hair there. Again, it wasn't like it wasn't a typical daycare. Like I said, it was just like your grandmother's house. When you walk in, it's just like, even, the smell of your grandmother's house, where like the good food and just love there. So that was great. My family-in-law, they live, as I mentioned earlier, they live in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So we would go there, so my kids would spend time with my mother and my father-in-law and their cousins too. But it's just, I love that. I love that we were able to find, and that daycare was the most affordable and the most loving and the most, I don't know. I just loved it so much. So I was able to have that, to have that village. And a lot of my friends have kids that are the same age as my kids. So we were able to do, and still till this day, do play days and just, share our experiences and our stories and our struggles and our joys, and everything in between when it comes to motherhood. This kind of leads me to the next thing about being a stay-at-home mom. I think that we need to talk more about working mom and staying at home mom, and also not put judgment on women for choosing either or. Because I have to be honest with you, I've heard from women who chose to be a stay at home mom, judging women that are working, saying, what kind of relationship do you think you're going to have if you go to work? Basically, your job is to be a mother. That makes me upset. And it comes from other women's, unfortunately. It comes from other women. If you choose to be a stay at home mom, then it becomes you abandoning yourself. All you are is just a mother. And then when you choose to go back to work, why are you choosing to go back to work? What kind of mother? You can never win. We're always judged. So do whatever works for you, right? Like, to me, I couldn't be a stay-at-home mom, because I will not be a good mom if I was a stay-at-home mom. One of my really, really good friend. I remember we had this conversation a while back, and she said, it's nice to have something to my name that is not a mom or a wife, but something that is just mine. Like, I am Iryna. This podcast, this is what I create. I love doing this. I love doing this. And it doesn't mean for a second that I love my kids any less. But I want to show my kids that there are different options. And I talk to my kids, in a level that they can understand. There are different options for women, for men. Men now choose to be a stay-at-home dad. And I love that. I love that for anybody who wants to do that, who wants to go back to work, who wants to stay at home. If that works for you and your family, who the fuck cares what anybody else think? But like I said, to me, I love having something that is mine. That is mine. But I bring kids into this. I show them what I do. When I sometimes have episodes, not some, well, most of my episodes is with guests. Sometimes they go with me to the studio and they see what I do. Yes, I am involving them in this thing I do, to show them, if you want to do this, you can do this. If you want to do something else, you can do something else. But I think it's important to show, especially our girls, that there is not this mold, this box that we should only fit. Create your own thing. Be whatever it is that you want to be. It doesn't mean if you're a stay home mom that you love your kids more than any working mom. That's one point. Another point is that sometimes both spouses have to work because they couldn't pay all of their bills and survive only on one income. So, everybody's situation is different. And sometimes when maybe your husband or your wife, your partner makes enough that you don't have to work, then you have that luxury. But we have to remember that not everybody have that luxury. So don't judge anybody, because again, we never know what anybody's going through. What sometimes might seem like one thing is not that. You know what I mean? So I just think that whatever works for your family, do that, and screw everybody else. People are going to judge regardless. I remember when I was listening to the episode with Shonda Rhimes on Call Her Daddy, she said something really great that stuck with me. And I'm paraphrasing. She basically said, if I'm succeeding in one thing, that I'm failing in another. If I am creating something or watching this great episode being filmed or whatever, I'm missing my daughter's first swimming lesson or recital or whatever that may be. And if I am doing something with my kids, that I'm missing something in my Shonda land, in my creative world. They were talking about women having it all. And she said it, and a bunch of other women said, we can have it all, just not all at the same time. And it's so true. A lot of us chasing that idea of perfection, me being the first one. I try to think I'm in recovery. Sometimes I relapse and go back, but I'm a work in progress. We wanted to show up and be everywhere at the same time. We wanted to show up for our kids, for our partners, for our work, for whatever creative we are doing, for the community, for everything. And we just can't be everywhere all at once. You have to choose what fills your cup the most, right? And being a mother, obviously, to me is the most important job. And everything I do is in mind of my kids and how it will affect them and my family. I love that I can do this. I love that I can, again, that I have something attached to my name that is just mine. So again, do what works best for you is the theme of this episode. Another thing that we as women go through after becoming a mothers is, our body goes through a huge transformation, obviously. I think when we become moms, we lose ourselves a little bit, especially when kids are little, because they need us so much. And sometimes it takes a while to find our way back to ourselves. And I don't like to say to be who we were before kids, to have the body that we had. None of that, because we all go through these chapters, through this period. We are gaining new experience and growing as a person, right? But finding who that new person is. I don't want to be who I was before I had kids, because that was a different person. Like now that my kids are older and I found this creative outlet, this podcast, and it fills my cup every time I do anything with this. Either that's prep for anything, thinking about like any promos I want to do, guest topics I want. It excites me all the time. But it took me a while to figure it out. What is that this new version of me? Mom, and also my body changed. Everybody's body changes, after we have kids. And so I'm not gonna sit here and say that I don't struggle with it, because I do. I still struggle with my body because it's not where I want it to be. And it's also learning to love your new body and how you look. But that is part of motherhood and a womanhood. And getting into that next chapter. Yeah, that's also like another thing, with, for me, the I don't know, I always struggle with my body, sometimes more than others, but you know what? That's like a daily, it has to be daily reminder for me, and I hope for all of you, to just love yourself the way you are. And I'm not saying like, oh, forget about eating healthy and working out, whatever, but be kind to you and your new body. Love your body in every stage of life. That's my advice to you, and also to myself. I remember a friend of mine, when she just had her first baby, I went and brought them, food. It was like I don't know, a few weeks after they came back from the hospital. So I went and brought them some food, and we were sitting outside on their backyard with the baby, and I said, "How are you?" I'm not asking how's the baby. I'm not asking, how are you? And she like almost started crying. She was like, "Thank you for asking. Nobody asked how I am." They said, "How's the baby? How is the baby sleeping? Is the baby eating? Is the baby gaining weight? Is the baby losing weight? Blah, blah, blah. Baby, baby, baby. Screw the baby. Ask woman how she is." No, I'm joking. Obviously, ask about the baby too. But also ask mother how she is doing, because it's important. Of course, you just birth a human. So it is your job to take care of that human, but it's also, I think, it is be this a reminder that ask women how they're doing. Either they just gave birth, or the baby is just turned 1 or turning 13 or going to college. Ask women how they are doing. Topic of motherhood is, there can be hours upon hours that we can talk. The whole topic of breastfeeding can be the whole hour. The whole, pregnancy and birth can be the whole episode. But I don't know. I just wanted to talk about this and tell my own stories and defining moments in motherhood. I am extremely grateful that I have my two amazing kids that love me and can tell me how they feel, that are kind, that I hear from other people how good they are. So I'm extremely proud. Also, they drive me crazy from time to time, and I'm tired and all of the other stuff. But being a mom is one of the best things for me, that also like inspires me to do other things in life. I would love to hear your motherhood story, your, I don't know, pregnancy story. Did anybody touch your belly? I don't know. I'm curious. I love talking about this. I love talking about this. There's going to be more solo episodes, because on a daily basis, I listen to so many different things: podcast, interviews. I love now that podcasts are video versions, and that are just like long form conversations. So many conversation inspire me to to have conversation on moments that define us podcast about so many other things. So there's going to be more solo episodes. There's going to be more amazing guests coming up. Don't forget to share, to listen, to watch, to subscribe, and also to share with other people. I really, the reason that I keep creating, keep talking, keep having conversation on different topics is because I want to I want everybody to, through this conversation, to see that we are so much more similar than we are different, then we need each other, that it's so important to share our stories, because hopefully when somebody hears something, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I thought I was fucking in this all alone. I thought I was the only one feeling like this." No, we all go through this. And if we share a story, we heal not only ourselves, but we heal community, and we create better healthier community. This is it for today. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. And I see y'all next time. Bye.